is it possible to work for myself and to work from anywhere?
80% of your success will come from the ability to deal with people. So that
Rejection, redirection, really. Can I make money online working from anywhere? And can I make this work?
I thought we could have some intros from our panelists. So we'll start with the screen to make lives easier. So Nalika, can you give us a quick intro to yourself?
Yes, hi everyone, great to see you. My name is Luca and I studied English at Oxford, graduated there, thought to myself, okay, what do I want to do with my career? The standard routes to go down, consulting, banking, law, if you wanted to go into the corporate space. So I went into consulting for almost 5 years at KPMG, went onto their grad scheme, got to quite a good level, was pretty fine, but I got to a point where I thought to myself, this is all I'm going to do. Am I just going to progress, get to a certain point and think, what else have I done with my career? So I then decided to do a little bit of an experiment. And I think today I really want to talk more about experimentation and the importance of experiments in your career. And I asked a question. I said, right, pandemic showed us that we could work well online. Okay. Is it possible to work for myself and to work from anywhere? That was my hypothesis. That was the question. So I took a sabbatical from KPMG and I then went and worked in 7 places around the world. Lisbon, Valencia, Split, Chiang Mai, Da Nang. Currently I'm in Asia now. And during that time worked on 2 businesses. One was a tech startup that I took to market. And the other was a public speaking, presenting business where I coached people around the world. I realized from this, okay, it is possible. It is possible to work for yourself and to work from anywhere, doing it now for 2 years. So I thought, okay, how can I help other people who want to do this? Because I can see that the world of work is changing. I can see people want more in their career. So that is why I then went on to create Imagine That, which is my current company, and that helps people start working independently for themselves and gain remote freedom. So yeah, really good to be here today, and I hope I can answer any questions you have if that's of interest to you.
Thank you. We'll go on to Emily.
Great. Hi, nice to meet you all. Glad to be here today. I'm Emily. I started off actually scheme in the Oxford University libraries. For a time I thought that information management would be something that I wanted to pursue. Realised quite quickly that wasn't for me, and then went into events management. I spent a bit of time as an account exec for a marketing agency, but was still hungry for more, so took up an interdisciplinary master's at Oxford in literature and arts, and from there went on to another grad scheme at Dyson. In my current role I lead brand strategy, general marketing planning for Pandora in the UK, and I look after 3 separate teams. So go to market, which is very focused on problem solving, building the holistic marketing plan for the UK, our local graphic design team, and also marketing and consumer insights.
Thank you. Matt.
Hi. I got my first job through a careers fair. That happened to be a small company with like 9 people in the UK. After a couple of years, a bit similar to Luca, I guess, I had a moment where I was on a train and there were people commuting and so many people were tired, and I thought, okay, if I'm going to be tired for the rest of my life, I'm going to be tired because I enjoy it. So that led me on a journey of exploration to what is that, and we might get into some of that later. Through that, I found this guy on his own who did something and was like, hey, do you need any help? I wrote to a lot of people, but he said, yep, I'm looking for some help. Having worked with 9 people in the UK, then just with 1 person, then I worked at a huge consultancy, PwC, which was a lot of people. Then I got approached to join a startup. So it was an American company headquartered in San Francisco, and they were building a European office, and I thought that would be cool. So I joined that. When I was there, I really was into the culture of the company because it was like an amazing place to work. I loved it, and I cared how it changed over time, and that led me to I used to go home and talk to my now wife about it. But I just wanted to find other people in London who were like really into the same thing I was into. So it started as a little get together, and then 10 years later, that's now my focus full time. The startup I worked at, they got acquired by Microsoft, so I worked at Microsoft for a while and experienced that. So now what I'm doing for the last few years, I've either been permanent in a company or working as a consultant with some well-known ones and some not well-known ones. My current focus is on, with all this noise around AI, how do companies internally make sense of it? So that's the journey I'm on.
Great, thank you all. We've had some questions sent in already, so I'm going to start by asking those, and then you can ask questions as well. Those of you joining online, feel free to put your questions in the chat or send them to me on Teams directly, and I'll ask them towards the end as well. But we are going to start our first question, which is, how do you find out or validate, if you already have an idea, what you want to do, especially if it's not a traditional career route? And how do you go about starting something new and making it a stable source of income? So I think, again, we'll start with Luca just because of the route that you described, and then we'll see if there are any other thoughts.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I remember at the start of my career being very stressed about, have I found the right thing that I want to do? I'm not exactly where I want to be right now. And it's very normal to feel those things. I think the best thing that you can do, you asked, how do you know what you want to do, especially if it's not a traditional career route? So experiment, try something. Even though I have now been working for myself and working from anywhere for the last 2 years, I never set out saying, okay, I'm going to be a digital nomad and an entrepreneur. I just said to myself, right, let's do a little experiment. Let's try. Can I make money online working from anywhere? And can I make this work? And I booked initially 3 months in Valencia, a one-way ticket, literally, from London to Valencia. And that was it. So I think don't worry too much and don't be too hard on yourself that you have to figure everything out and that every decision you make is going to be the right decision. When I was at KPMG, was there almost 5 years, got to manager, I worked in different teams. I experimented. And the thing is, when I worked in some of those teams, I realized that it wasn't for me. And looking back, that was equally as valuable as doing things that do turn out the way you want to. So don't worry, realize that it's okay if you don't understand something or you don't enjoy it. Maybe it's not for you, and that is valuable. And then the other question around, how do you go about starting something new? Particularly if you're wanting to start your own business or your own thing, go out again and experiment and validate. Start a wait list. Just see if there are early signs of interest in what it is you want to do. Don't just throw everything in and go for it. Do some steps before that just to see if there is interest, and then you will feel like, okay, there is interest in this space. Let me pursue that properly.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Emily or Matt, do you have anything you'd like to add to that question?
I completely agree with what you've said. I think try not to put so much pressure on yourself at the beginning. The greatest leaders I've had the opportunity to work with have come from breadth, that I think it's quite rare to come through a career now that is linear, especially in a corporate environment. And for you to progress, actually, it's better to make lateral moves and try different things. I think it's only through doing that that you can understand what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. But I think when you're starting out, ask yourself, what would a good day, a good week at work look like? Is it people-centric? Is it, actually, I just want to focus on the data? And that will help you get to the kind of roles that you'd be interested in. Read widely, look at brands that you're interested in personal life, industries that you are also focused on. Just do as much research as you possibly can, but don't put that pressure on yourself for the first job that you go into to be the only job that you ever have, the only career that you'll ever have, because I think it is actually more beneficial in the long run to have that breadth.
This might be selection bias, but none of us here have the same job that we started out with. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, can you say the question again?
Yes, how do you find out or validate what you want to do, especially if it's not a traditional route, and how do you go about starting something new and making it a sustainable source of income?
In my free time, I would spend time on BBC technology news website. I found that interesting. I read about tech, and I went exploring the internet, and I looked at, okay, what are company versions of MySpace? Found there were these like internal wikis. It's like when Wikipedia was getting popular, so there were internal wikis for companies. None of them were based in the UK that I could see, but there were resellers in the UK. So I wrote to people, I wrote to all these resellers, I don't even know what that means, of these technology. And this guy worked in like Surrey, he was like, oh yeah, I'm looking for some help. So that led me on to a path that however many years later, when I was working in this company that Microsoft acquired, that was because this kind of, there's many steps in between, but writing that piece of paper, and okay, I've spent time on MySpace, I've spent time on BBC Tech, and I enjoyed being a consultant, and I kind of just went low level and it went from there. That's how I found what I enjoyed.
Yeah. Our next question is very specific. How do you, or what does it take to get into a popular grad scheme? How do you sell your experience and what are they looking for?
So I don't think it will be any surprise to any of you that grad schemes are competitive and they're getting more so. You need to be strategic when you approach your applications. So I'd say, first of all, when you're setting up your CV, your cover letters, be targeted to each application. I'd also say a lot of big brands really rely on psychometric testing to weed out the good candidates from the great ones. So it's worthwhile doing a bit of preparation, making sure that you're familiar with verbal, logical, numerical reasoning, because that will kind of separate you out. When you've got through the first round of applications, it would usually be a psychometric test before you get into a video interview. For video interviews, I would say make sure, some of the best advice I've ever been given for interviewing was have a list of great examples that you could apply to several different questions. So through your work experience, internships, part-time jobs that you've had, maybe projects that you've done through your degree, think about times when you've demonstrated certain skills or behaviours. Think about those stories that you can tell when it comes to interviews and be prepared to talk about them. That situation, task, action, result model is really useful for those kind of conversations. 80% of your success will come from the ability to deal with people. So that's really important.
Thank you. Luca, do you have anything to add to that one?
I still remember after I graduated, I had an Excel spreadsheet of all the grad schemes that I was applying for. And it was color coordinated, so I'm a little bit of a nerd like that, where red was basically rejection, orange was in progress, and green was I got it. And most of that spreadsheet was red. And I remember at the time feeling awful, thinking that my career is not going to go anywhere. I was seeing my peers get into these amazing grad schemes. Yes, I did eventually get that one green. I did get into KPMG. However, don't put so much, I think we spoke about this, don't put so much pressure on yourself. If I had to go back, I would say, don't worry. So I say that to you because you are going to get rejections. Please don't let it impact your self-worth. Please don't let it make you think your career is not going anywhere. So I just wanted to start off with that. But I think my advice with that is, what are you as an individual bringing to the table? What is going to make you stand out? Don't be afraid to show your personality, particularly when you get there in person at the Launchpad assessment days and these sorts of things. Don't be afraid to show your personality. And don't be afraid to talk about things that you've done, whether it's extracurricular things you did at university or anything that might make you stand out. Make sure you do it in an authentic way, but don't think, oh, I only need to talk about my hard skill sets. Think about, actually, what did you do that made you a little bit different? What may they never have heard before that will make you memorable? And if you're memorable, that's a really good thing. And then the other piece of advice I give is, when you are in group settings and doing group activities, Don't make the mistake of, you can either do one extreme. You can either just sit back, not say anything. It's not good, right? Or you can think, okay, I need to stand out and I need to, show my skills. There's only 1 hour for me to do this group exercise and shine. So I'm going to dominate the conversation. Also not good. I think one quick, very easy tip to do is, if you see someone around the table in the group setting who maybe is a bit quiet and maybe isn't contributing so much, invite them in, ask them, what do you think? Because these people who are assessing you are also assessing your leadership ability or your potential leadership ability. And that is a really good thing. So make sure you show that collaboration and that teamwork as well when you are working together.
That's a really good tip. I really like that. And also, I have exactly the same spreadsheet that you talked about, and I didn't even bother to put the green on it when I got a job. So it's just yeah, I actually have a coach who told me never create a spreadsheet like that, because all it does is just demoralizes you, because you only need one yes. So with all of those reds, it doesn't matter, because you are only looking for one yes at the end of it. So I think that's a really good point.
Can I just add to your point? I thought, Niluka, you made an incredible point about making sure that if somebody's quiet in the conversation, that you try and loop them in. They're really looking not for the right answer necessarily. They're not marking you against kind of a tick sheet. Have they said this thing, this thing, this thing? They're looking for how you think and how you interact with people in a work setting. So it's not necessarily that you've given the correct answer. They want to know that you're personable and that you have future leadership potential. I thought that was a really good point.
But we'll move on to our next question, which is something that we've actually touched on a bit already. How do you stay excited and motivated during career ups and downs, especially dealing with uncertainty or rejections? And I'm happy to open the floor to anyone that would like to start. Maybe I'll give Niluka the first chance because of the screen.
So I think with this one, couple of tips. Firstly, try and find yourself a mentor. I know that we hear that a lot, and it's like, I should do it. It's always like, I should have a mentor. But honestly, right from the start of my career, my first 3 months on that grad scheme to now, I have had a mentor. And that is so valuable in terms of bringing you a fresh perspective, in terms of having someone to talk to. So that's the first piece of advice I give. Second piece of advice I give is to go out and talk to leaders or role models. They don't necessarily have to be in your field. So again, when I was at KPMG and now, I will connect with people. They may not be in the same area as me, but they've done something very interesting. And again, speaking to people, particularly people who are 5, 10, 20 years ahead of you, will teach you so much. I remember speaking to some of the partners when I was just a graduate and feeling like, and telling them openly, you know, I don't feel like I'm necessarily fitting in this space. What do you think about this idea? So being around people who have a bit more experience can really help you when you are struggling, when you're questioning yourself, when you're feeling that doubt. I also think rejection, redirection, really. Again, share a little story with you. I remember being in one team at KPMG, and I was going for early promotion and I didn't get it. And I was really upset that I didn't get it. I remember having a discussion later, and the team leader said to me, Niluka, are you sure you really want to stick it out just for the promotion? And I remember thinking, what? And looking back, and then I reflected on it that week. Looking back, not getting that promotion was the best thing, because I then moved team into customer brand and marketing, which really was my space. And I learned so much. So don't worry about the rejection. I know it's horrible at the time. I hated it as well. But often it's a really good thing, because it will show you, okay, this is actually the path that I need to go down. This is what might work better for me. So don't be afraid of those wrong turns in the road. It's okay if it's a little bit messy at times. It's okay if you feel a bit uncomfortable. Actually, it's a good thing, because it's signaling to you, okay, what can I change? What is actually a better fit for me?
It's a really, really great example. And to, again, provide a personal one of the best things that ever happened to me is a redundancy at a company that I hated. I would not have left otherwise. That made me leave. Either of you want to go next?
I completely agree with what's already been said. I would add to that resilience is really important. All being well, your career will be long. You'll be working for a long time. I think all of us will be.
Forever.
So to get through and survive, to thrive in high level, sometimes corporate environments, sometimes not, you need to look after yourself. I think that's really important, and it's really basic advice, but make sure that you're getting enough sleep, nutrition, exercise, all of those basic things around self-care are also really important when it comes to your careers. You might be lucky to have a really great manager in your career or be part of a great culture that is people-centric, but you also might not. Corporate environments can be really tough. They can be really, really challenging. They will take and take and take from you. So you need to be the first person to set those boundaries and say, you know what, I need to sign off at this time. I need to look after myself. I need to exercise. I need to go and spend time with my friends. But whatever it is, you need to try and set those boundaries. And that's really hard at the beginning of your career.
That's a great point. I've also read somewhere that people think that self-care doesn't feel like work. It is work, because at the times when you most need to do it is when it's hardest. So, when everything's going great, you're very happy to sit down and meditate or whatever you enjoy. But when you feel stressed and pressured, that's when you don't want to do it, and that's when you should. We have 15 minutes, so I'm going to combine some of the remaining questions. But I think the next one is really interesting as we think about kind of portfolio designed careers. So it's how easy is it to change careers at different stages? So thinking specifically about early careers, 5 years experience, 10 years plus experience.
Yeah, I just wanted to say just before that, the point Emily made, I really liked around making sure you look after yourself. And I just do want to make one point on that, because having gone from corporate to then working for myself, I have really learned that it's not just about length and how many hours you do. And I think it can be a little bit hard when you're in a job, because I have to be here from this time to this time. But the thing is, what I have seen and learned so much from entrepreneurship is 2 things matter: output, results. If you are doing that, it doesn't matter that you're staying 3 hours past time. It doesn't matter if you leave a few hours early. What matters is the output and the results. And I think knowing that can really help you not just say, oh, okay, I need to work long hours, because that's going to make me stand out. So I just wanted to make that point. On the question around, how easy is it to change your career at different stages? I think I would urge people, in terms of taking risks, so I have, as you said, Anna, I have taken a number of risks, and my biggest risk was 2 things: working for myself and also leaving London and deciding to just work from anywhere, which was a big risk, and it took a lot of bravery to be able to do that. I think that part of the reason I did it was because I knew it would get harder. I knew that if I stayed in London, in my role, maybe in the same company, I knew that I would get more molded, as it were, right? And I think earlier on in your career, you're less set in your career identity. You can take risks, you can try different things, you can try entrepreneurship, think it's not for you, go back to corporate, it's okay. But I think don't leave it too late. And I always like to say to people, if you have a voice at the back of your head, like I did, that just keeps niggling at you and keeps saying, try this thing, or apply for this role, or go to that team, or start that business, or become a digital nomad, whatever it might be, and it keeps coming to you, it's a quiet voice, right? Listen to it, because the worst thing is to get 10, 15 years later in your career and think, and I've spoken to people who've said this to me, and think, you know what, I wish I'd done something different. I wish I'd been brave and taken a risk and just tried. And that's the theme that I've tried to bring through today, is around don't be afraid to experiment. So I hope that's helpful.
I think that's a really good point about it. It gets harder because the further you are progressed in your career, you get used to a certain salary level, a certain standard of living, and that can be hard to give up, especially if you're maybe the breadwinner in the household or you're supporting yourself. That can be really hard. So do it early, do it while you can and have those opportunities. I completely agree with you.
I think it's also really good to remember that you can do it, but it often comes with a step back in salary then. So the savings can be really helpful there. If you've built up enough savings through, say, the first 10 years of career to have a complete change, that's really good. But Luca, to your point, my husband still wishes he were an economist, and he's a biochemist and software developer. So he feels like it's a little bit too late, but maybe not. Our last question is more for again, input welcome from either of you as well. What advice do you have for anyone thinking of working for themselves and having location freedom?
So I think with this one, and this is what we do at Imagine That, and what I love to now help people with, is get the career side and get the business side sorted first. Don't just, and I never tell people, don't just go to Asia or whatever without a clear plan, start nomading. That's not the way to do it, right? You want to figure out, how are you going to monetize your skills? How are you going to offer some form of service online? What is it that you're going to do first? Okay, if you have an idea of exactly what that might be, then the question is, how do I validate that? So going out, speaking to customers, doing some early testing. And you can do this if you already have a role. You can do this as a side hustle. With Help Me Present, which was my public speaking coaching business, where I worked with clients across the world and did it all online. I started that when I was at KPMG, and it wasn't any conflict of interest, so it was signed off. You can be clever in how you go about starting an online business and doing it in a way that lowers the risk. Then when it comes to the digital nomad aspect, I never set out saying, I'm going to become a digital nomad. That's now what I'm going to do. I just said, if I could do my role online, why can't, and I'm doing it in London, why can't I be on the Amalfi Coast or somewhere beautiful for a while? And we can see that the future of work is absolutely changing, and the stats are crazy when it comes to that. So I think when it comes to starting to gain location freedom, do it as a little experiment. Say, you know what, okay, my business is now, I'm getting those early signs. Maybe you have signed your first client, whatever it might be. I'm going to go and do 2 months somewhere else and see how you like it. It's not for everyone. Everyone is wanting to do this. But I think if you break it down into those small steps, so with the business, making sure you do your validation and getting those early signs. And then when it comes to having location freedom, do a little experiment first, pick a location, try it out. You will start to move forward and progress. Don't think of it as this massive thing you need to do. I need to have a mega business now, and I need to be a full-time nomad. Don't think of it like that. Think of it as, I'm going to experiment and I'm going to start putting the steps in place.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Okay, well then, thank you very much for everyone's time. Can we give a round of applause for our panelists?